Warm outside, I completely understand. But one of the most unique thing about today's episode is that today we're completing the 13th episode of Tech Tuesdays. We started this journey on the 17th of January last year, the same place, and today happens to be the last time we are convening at this particular place. And we'll talk more about this after the session. For some of you who are attending Tech Tuesdays for the very first time, Tech Tuesday UK stemmed from the very idea of building a community that ideates, nurtures, and then fosters a free for discussion of disruptive technologies, which have the potential to impact 1 billion lives. Of course, this journey or Tech Tuesdays UK would not have happened without the active support of our current partner, KNL Getz. They have been sort of supporting us from the very first time we sort of shared the idea with them, and it's been a great journey. And as I said earlier, we'll speak more about it in terms of our season 2, which is starting from February onwards after the session ends. As I keep saying every time, please spread the good word around of Tech Tuesday UK. You can use our Twitter handle, X handle, and we are very much on LinkedIn. It would be great if you can share your inputs, thoughts, feedbacks, criticism on LinkedIn, tagging Tech Tuesday UK. Last but not the least, as a tradition, we invite some of you to share a few words on camera after the session ends, during the time of networking and drinks. So I request all of you to stick around, network, have a drink, and we may just call you one of some of you for the video bite. We've got Shubha out here who is volunteering with us, and we've got Elena. She's going to join with us in some time from now. As you may be aware, every episode of Tech Tuesday UK is based on a particular topic, technology topic. And the theme for today evening is Web3. And to drive the discussion today, we have an amazing panel with us, two of my good friends. Let me take the pleasure of inviting them to take their seats. Can I invite Gautam? Gautam Hazari is the CTO at Secure ID. Can I have a round of applause, please? And we have Jasprit Bindra, who is the founder of Tech Whisperer. Jasprit. Okay, I leave the floor to both of you guys, and all yours. Thank you.
Gautam, you're the more senior partner here.
Hi everyone, I'm Gautam Hazari. I'm the CTO and co-founder for Secure ID. Have been working in Web3 in a very non-traditional way. So Web3 not in a finance-centric way, but in the core of Web3, which is decentralization and giving back control to the user. For quite some time, I started to look into blockchain in 2014, 2015, then worked on some industry initiatives on some core problems, where we'll talk about that later in Web3. And right now, trying to solve the identity problem of Web3 and beyond. We'll talk about Web5 as well, although here the topic is Web3. That's right.
Thanks, Gautam. Hi, Jasprit here. Good to be back here. I've been here for a while. I've been here a few times, rather. I'm not working in the depths of a Web3 business like my friend here is. I started working in and around Web3 when it really wasn't called that. And there were different names. Blockchain was one of them, and obviously people talked about the decentralized web and sometimes crypto, and then the metaverse happened, and all of those in some sense kind of coalesced around the Web3 definition. I was joking with him and Subhash before I came in here that the last time I attended a Web3 discussion or spoke about it or wrote about it was actually January 28th of last year. And I'm very active, for people who know me, writing about technologies. And I think a part of that reason is that, and something which we're going to talk about, is that Web3 became enmeshed with fintech. And people thought Web3 equals fintech, fintech equals Web3, and Web3 doesn't exist beyond fintech in that sense, and that really isn't true. And then when the whole crypto collapse happened, people stopped talking about it because fintech had, well, you know, Web3. But Web3 is far beyond that. It transcends much beyond that. And what I personally talk, work around is more the philosophy behind Web3 rather than really the technology behind Web3. And I hope that's also something which we're going to talk about. And I would love to know whether you agree with this sentiment or, you know, what's your view on it?
Absolutely. And, you know, as Jasprit said that, and I'm sure we all know how active he is in the technology space, right? And him not talking or engaged in Web3 for a year, that says something, right? There is something that needs to happen in the Web3 to not just make it work, to take the web to the next level. Let's talk about that. But before that, right? So that we all are on the same page, let's discuss what exactly Web3 is, okay? Just to add to the confusion, Web3 and Web 3.0 are not the same thing, right? Web 3.0 is not a new thing. Web 3.0 as a terminology, if you're following the journey of the web, was introduced by none other than Tim O'Reilly in 2006. But Web 3, and that means completely different things, right? So when the Web 3.0 terminology was introduced, it was to evolve the web towards a semantic web. Because web, it's a bit dumb, right? There is no intelligence in there. Try to search for example, right now as well, try to search for bill. Just use the word bill and then any search engine, let's say Google, right? There is some thinking in your head until the internet of thoughts are there. Whatever you're typing is what the web will understand, right? You type the word bill, you're thinking probably Bill Clinton, I don't know, or Bill Gates. The result that will come up will $10 bill or £1 bill, Bill Gates, Bill and Melinda Foundation, anything of that sort, right? So it's not really contextual. There is a semantic missing, right? So that's where Tim O'Reilly tried to evolve the web to add the semantics in there. There are some technologies which were introduced which almost vanished. They need to be brought back. So one thing was called RDF, Resource Description Framework, right? Where anyone who is adding a content in the web, they need to say what that content is about, some sort of metadata in a structured way. There was something called OWL was introduced, Web Ontology language, because there needs to be an ontology. If you're defining a word like bill, there is an ontology behind that, right? They could mean anything, and it can start from a generic thing that it can spread out. That was the idea of Web 3.0 in 2006. And collectively in the technology world, we forgot that. Then in 2014, Gavin Wood was the co-founder of Ethereum. And he's the founder of, if you're following the, not just Web3, the entire, let's say, blockchain ecosystem, he's the founder of Polkadot, which is making a big kind of splash in the interoperability of Web3 and beyond. So he coined or recoined the term Web3. To differentiate it from Web 3.0, he said Web 3. Web, no space, and 3. And what he meant was a decentralized web. And that's the core of it, as Jasprit was talking about as well. That's the essence of it. Not just because right now, and again, it will be great to get your views as well there, is right now if you ask, or even if you search on what exactly is Web3, there are two, or right now, maybe three things which will come up. One is NFT, the other one is DAO, the third one will be asset tokenization. So Web3 has been kind of, navigated out of the essence of decentralization through some sort of greed as well, we can say, and that's why we see all sorts of scams and all. And then these are bombs, right? If you're following NFT, for example, in 2022, the NFT market cap was 41 billion USD. Today, this morning I checked, it's 4 billion. In the last 24 hours, there is a 27% downfall that has happened. And then the reasons are there, right? So, jointly as an industry, we cannot probably allow the things which are, again, part of Web3 but not Web3, should take down Web3, on a whole. So it will be great
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get your
and
views.
so, let's kind of focus on this decentralization word in a sense. And yes, I totally agree with the fact that the essence has kind of been taken away, and that's where the whole fintech NFT definition of Web3 kind of came about. But Web3 philosophically has very interesting concept behind it. See, when the internet was born, or when the World Wide Web was created by
Tim Berners-Lee.
Tim Berners-Lee, Sir Tim Berners-Lee. He had a vision, okay, and the vision was actually all about empowering everyone around the world. It was about this through free flow of information, free flow of commerce, and empowering what was called the long tail, for people who remember, that it should not only be about the 4 or 5 big guys, but every single creator, every single website therefore needs to be empowered. Tim Berners-Lee right now is a bitter man, okay, because he has learned to realize that the web, which he created, actually is become heavily centralized. And there's no World Wide Web anymore in many ways. It's a Google Wide Web, okay, or it's a Meta Wide Web. I mean, there are 4 or 5 big companies have kind of captured, in a sense, most of the web as we know it. They derive almost all value from the World Wide Web. And this centralization, frankly, has become more and more pronounced every year that has gone by. And so the whole Web3 concept movement, in a sense, was to bring back the original vision, okay, of Tim Berners-Lee and the other people who very romantically created the World Wide Web at one time. And it was that how can we now look at everyone else also owning, and how can we look at democratizing and decentralizing the World Wide Web, and therefore Web3. And there are, many ways this is described. And for example, one way to think about it is that Web 1, the original web, was much more about what is called the read web. There was stuff which was served to you, Yahoo, MSN, okay, and you kind of read that, and it was like. And then Web 2, loosely, was the read and write web. So you can read stuff, but you also can write stuff. So, Twitter, X, or Facebook, or, you can do both. It's two-way. Web 3, by that nature, is defined as read, write, and own. So not only do you read, write, but you own a small piece of the web. And that's where the blockchains and tokenization and identity and everything else came in. And so the whole thing was that, look, can we look at this being owned by everyone who uses it? And actually, in some sense, pays to use it through different kind of token mechanisms. And the blockchain was a good architecture to build something like this on. And that's where it kind of came in. NFTs were a good way, if not done in the board yacht club kind of way, were a good way to derive utility, to create utility kind of mechanisms or tokens around it. And that was the whole construct, in a sense, of the way people were thinking about. And before I hand over to you, the way, therefore, I look at Web3, and it's a controversial way to look at it, but the way I look at Web3 really is that it's actually a new kind of business model. The web today has a very skewed business model. It's about you part with your data willingly. It's used to monetize. It's monetized, and advertisers pay the intermediaries for that. And that's how the World Wide Web works. Okay, advertisers pay for your solicited or unsolicited data. But Web3, through mechanisms of tokenization, etc., serves to change that business model to micro payments, etc., and different kind of mechanisms, which I'm sure you'll know more about. And that's where Stripe also, when it was kind of born, they said that they have come in to increase the GDP of the web. That's their so that everyone kind of pays through micro payments, which could be digital payments, could be fiat payments, etc. But to kind of wrap up, that decentralization vision goes beyond just decentralizing from these few companies, but it actually goes to how each one of us owns it, literally owns it through some kind of an ownership mechanism, and therefore takes care of it. And whatever your data or your personal effects are, if they are sold, you get a part of it back. You are not just giving it out. You're literally kind of creating digital wallets in that sense. And that's like the philosophical vision. I mean, there's a lot of it which is still to be realized. But again, and I've been provocative a little bit in the way I've said it, but would love to know from you and others what you think about that.
Yeah, so it's interesting that word or words, business model is critical, right? So again, let's step back a bit in the overall journey of the web, right? Web 1, which we never called Web 1, you mentioned it.
Yeah.
That was 1989, right? That was a read-only web. Yahoo, MSN, AOL, full stop, there was nothing else. We were all browsing. We invented new verbs, right? Browsing, which was reading, but navigating through. What was the business model? There's nothing, right? And that's why the 2000 bubble busted, because there was no business model. They were trying to figure out what can be done. But then it took almost a decade to coin Web 2. So Web 2, Web 2.0, we called it that time, we didn't call it Web 2, was in 1999. So there was a there was a blog that was published by Dalsin. She was one of the web developers. She published, and to differentiate the Web 1 from whatever will be happening then onwards, she used the terminology Web 2.0. Then O'Reilly publication picked it up. Then they formed, if you have been following it, the Web 2.0 conference. I still remember that was, that was groundbreaking at that time. Lots of discussions happened. And then the discussion was not on technology, it was on the business model. Because what was getting challenged is there was no business model for Web 1. How will Yahoo make money? How will AOL make money? Other than selling, ISP services. But as a content, how will they sell money? How will they get money? There was no, even payment gateways at that time. So in 1999, it was coined, but nothing happened. In 2004, this famous Web 2.0 conference happened by O'Reilly Media. And then that triggered discussions, but still, it was not catching up. So you can write, but how will you write? It's very tricky to do that, right? But then something happened in 2007. And very interestingly, today's date is important. So 9th of January 2007, Steve Jobs announced iPhone. It was not available on that day. It was available from 29th of June 2007. I remember because I was in the queue to get it. So 9th of January, this date today, was when it was announced, and that changed everything. Now, every one of us had a device to write into the web. And then two sorts of business model immediately got created. And that's what we are still using. Jasprit mentioned the ad-driven. We can hate it, we can like it, we can talk about it, but that's a reality. Many of the leaders in the web 2.0, the web that we see it right now, are driven by that. There is another business model as well that was created, that's the two-way business model. All this gig economy, like Uber, is a two-way business model, right? So there are drivers, there are riders. Airbnb, same story. So, and many of the payment gateways, e-commerce providers, same story, they're platforms. Amazon started to stock, but generally they were platforms. They were, the two sides of the stories were sellers and buyers. So this read and write web created that business model. But then, if you think of any of the, let's say Uber, right? The two sides, they don't own anything. So if you don't own, in that case, there are problems there, right? So same with any of the social media. In Insta, if you upload anything, you don't own that, right? I don't know if anyone has read the terms and condition. All those content are owned by these platform providers. So the two sides, whoever is watching or looking into your feed, subscribing to your feed, and whoever is uploading, they don't own it. So that was, the business model was okay, but it was not okay at the same time, as Jasprit was saying as well. I completely agree what you said. So the missing piece there was, I as a writer, which we now call creator, this creator economy has been created, I want to own it, right? How do I do that? One way to do that is I create my own platform and I create my own content, data, whatever we say, then I own it. That's not scalable, right? That's not possible for everyone. Everyone who is uploading into Insta or Facebook, they need to create their own platform or own that platform. That's not going to happen. So we need a new system where we, as the creator of content, data, whatever we say, own it as well. And that cannot work in a centralized way. Because if it's a centralized way, in that case, I can't own that platform, right? It has to be decentralized. So it's a natural transition from the old business model to the new model, as we are talking about, this decentralization. And there are other drivers as well, especially in and that's your field, Jasprit, AI, right? This year it's been predicted that we will probably, hopefully, see lots of personal agents, personal AIs, right? Our data, from all the sensors that we carry around in our house or in our bodies, that data will be used, and then probably these, let's say, personal AI agents will be using to take decisions on behalf of us. Who owns that data? Right now, we don't have a mechanism for that ownership, to define that ownership. So we need the web to evolve, not just for NFTs and DAOs and asset tokenization. We need the web architecture, the web business model to evolve to cater for this new world that we are talking about. Another very interesting thing is, this centralization, decentralization thing, this is not new. Let's go back to, at least in computing, and then we will talk about what is different. In the computing world, let's go back to 1960s or between 1960s and 1980s. The computers were these large time-sharing systems or mainframe systems, right? No one could own it. You cannot keep the mainframe system at your home. They needed specialized rooms with low temperatures and so on. It costed huge as well. So that was centralized, right? So the entire computing ecosystem started as centralized, and there were time-sharing things. So we used to have time-sharing terminals where we used to buy, time when we can use that centralized thing. Then things changed. Then Microsoft came into the picture. They gave PCs to all of our houses. Then it became decentralized. So decentralization is not new. Then we started to talk about client-server architecture, right? So there was a server which was decentralized. There was a client which was decentralized. Then we started to get into these cloud-based models. Again, back to centralized. All this Web 1, Web 2, again, centralized. Now we are talking about decentralized. So it's almost like a pendulum, right? I don't know how long we will stay with decentralization, but yes.
Sorry, am I interrupting?
Sure, sure.
I've been itching to say this when you were talking about it, but all of you know the 404 error, or many of you know. What is the 404 error?
Page not loading.
Page not loading, right? I might have the number wrong, but actually there's also a 403 error. Anyone can guess?
Forbidden.
Huh?
Forbidden.
No.
Yeah,
Maybe then, but maybe I'm getting the number wrong. It's either 403 or 402 or 405, I think, which is payment not found. When again Tim Berners-Lee created the web, okay, the vision was, people used to pay for stuff at that time. Okay, and so it was that, look, if you want a particular piece of content or you want a service from this beautiful, wonderful thing that has been created, you'll probably be expected to pay for it. But that as the land grab happened due to the business model of advertising and data monetization. Most of these big companies found that it was so much easier for people not to pay, because you suddenly feel you're not paying for anything, right? But you're actually ending up paying for thousands and thousands of dollars because of your attention and your and the data that you're providing and the engagement that you're providing. An average time spent for a person in the Western world is between 5.5 to 6 hours on their mobile phone every day. Yeah, every day. And all that is actually money, which is getting monetized. And so that kind of that basically led to this situation where, as you rightly said, that all content, all everything, all data which was put out there started getting owned centrally by these large platforms. It's weird, right? I mean, you buy a book on Kindle today, for example. Okay, you pay for it, right? You pay £10 for that book. Tomorrow, if you decide that you don't want Kindle anymore, but you want another e-reading service, what happens to the books you bought? Any guess? You don't own even one of it. They are all owned by the platform. You paid for it. Yeah, and so think of the same way as data. We do this with data also, but there we can't monetize it, and therefore we don't feel it. Here, if you've bought £10,000 worth of books from Amazon, you actually don't own them still, unless you're tied onto the device. And so that is actually criminal in many ways, and in many ways now regulators, consumers, etc., are waking up to it, and there therefore needs to be this mechanism for individual creators to get paid without having their own platforms, and that brings us to me, and you mentioned the word, and so I can talk a little about it and finish it. To me, probably the most exciting thing about Web3. To me, the most exciting thing about Web3 is not about NFTs or about blockchain or about many of the other things. To me, the most interesting and exciting thing is actually the rise of the creator economy. And again, it's very interesting because we have grown up, most of us at my age at least, have grown up thinking there is a certain way to earn a living, which is again going and working in a centralized organization. You work with a large central organization, it pays you for your time, attention, energy. The creator economy is a decentralized way of working, what sometimes are called YouTubers or whatever, but people who are creating content today are still at the mercy of the platform. Google will announce one day magnanimously that we are actually going to share revenue from YouTube. Actually, that all belongs to you. Right. So the creator economy and the rise of the creator economy, creating a Substack, for example, or a Medium kind of stuff, which are called Web3 companies, to me is the biggest advantage or the biggest benefit of Web3. And that plays into, well, you said my area, which is AI. About how, the combination of a Web3 and a generative AI has the potential to create a massive creator economy. Because as you kind of work with it to kind of create new stuff. Today you can create some brilliant art using generative AI tools, then what do you do with it after that? NFTs, in a sense, came in to address this need, where a creator could monetize their output, and that's how NFTs happened. They became famous, but then NFTs went into that same crypto bubble, which got created from a trader viewpoint and went for a toss. But and therefore I come back to where I started with saying that actually Web3 gives you a new business model of the World Wide Web, and that's how in a decentralized business model, and that's how in my mind it should be. It should be understood rather than a fintech.
Absolutely. Another, important thing here is, again, going back to the journey of the web. One thing has not changed at all. So again, the web utilized internet as the enabler. And then the internet was never designed to identify the human users, right? Mm-hmm. It was designed to identify the computers. That's why there are IP addresses. We invented internet, not the web. It was WinServ, right? Who invented IP and basically created the IP specification. We humans, fortunately or unfortunately, we don't have IP addresses, right? So then web, when it used internet as a backbone technology, it didn't have the mechanism to identify the human user, but it's us as humans who are using it. For Web 1, that was not a problem, because in Web 1, as we were discussing earlier, it was read-only, right? All we were doing was browsing. So it's me browsing AOL or Justpreet or you or the fraudster who cared. At that time, there were not AI chatbots. But anyway, but then we started to do interesting thing in Web 2. We had real business, right? We started to do commerce. We started to do buy-sell things. And now we started to do buy-sell NFTs. Then the problem became a bit more serious, right? Because the internet still doesn't know how to identify the human users. Then what did we do? We thought we were solving the problem, but we were patching it. We started to create, kind of hacks. We started with user ID password, right? Then we thought, oh, it's not cool, or there are lots of problems, right? So if you see the stats, so there is one report that's very popular in this space. It's called the Verizon DBIR, Data Breach Investigation Report. Whatever anyone says, any technology says that they are improving this thing, one stats doesn't change for the last 5 years they are publishing it. Every single, or the entire, let's say, data breach, they call it. Data breach is any problem that has happened online, right? 81 to 86% of all those data breaches are related to, they call credentials. So credential is passwords, OTPs, and anything you can think of, right? That doesn't change. Anyone will say, oh, biometrics are there. But anyways, the reason is because internet doesn't know how to identify the human user. So we started with user ID password. We said, oh, not enough. Let's do OTPs. In many countries, OTPs. In India, like OTPs. Even if you want to check into the hotel, they ask for OTP. Then we thought OTPs are bad. And then, things started to happen like, I don't know if you've seen that Netflix series, what's that? Jamtara, right? Where there is an industry. There is one small city in India, apparently, every single earning person, their business is to steal OTP. And this is not fiction, this is reality, right? And it's not surprising, stealing OTP is easy. Then we thought that's not enough. Let's bring in biometrics. And then generative AI killed that entire.
Well, unless you count Sam Altman, who wants to scan everyone's irises, but he wants to do it he also wants to do it for separating human beings from AI bots. That's very interesting. I thought maybe any comments,
So again, I'll just conclude
Yeah,
it. The reason I was saying that identity is Web3 gives us an opportunity to own our own content, own our own data, and most importantly, own our own identity in the internet. And that's what is one of the core of Web3, or should be the essence of Web3. Not just some short-term commercial, financial greed, I would say. Unfortunately, that's what is driving, and that's what happens, right? At some point it will settle down, and then we will get to the reality. Yes, please.
in fact, just before I move to you, just because you said the password thing, the other way which people sometimes talk about differentiating 1, 2, and 3 is Web 1. Well, I know that it doesn't exist, but Web 1 is give username password. That's the screen of Web 1. The screen of Web 2 is link with Facebook, link with Google, link with X. That's the screen of Web 2. And it actually reflects that you're kind of going through the web through these three entities. Otherwise, you're not. Web 3 actually is linked to wallet. Okay, is the identity of the Web 3, because the deal being that and that wallet is not is a digital token wallet, is that you link to a wallet, okay, and through that you'll buy tokens and therefore pieces of that website and pieces of that web, and you'll be funding in the whole ICO, etc. And that's how you can see these three screens, how they actually reflect the ethos of it. Now, obviously, many of them have been misused, etc. But sorry.
No, sorry at all. Should I speak or? Okay. So I must admit, I'm learning quite a lot from you, both of you, because although I'm a tech journalist, I don't know nothing about Web3, so you've educated me quite well, so thank you. One of the things I think that comes from that is what's happening in the market, the industry, to enable this decentralization, because there's too many powerful forces with Google, Amazon, well, Google, Meta, and all the other players. So what is it that's going to trigger this whole sort of I own my identity, you can't have it unless you pay me for it or unless I give you permission?
Thanks. I'll start and then please jump in. So, first of all, I would say not enough is happening, right? This is, and then this is probably natural because, as we were saying, right now, if you search for Web3, you will get NFT, DAO, asset tokenization, full stop, right? That's a short-term greed that's driving it, and it will happen, and it will fall down, and then we'll get to reality. But there are other things happening as well, and to confuse the things, even some large names. So, for example, Jack Dorsey, right? Jack Dorsey, in end of 2022, he came up very strongly saying that, and then very similar kind of ethos, saying that this is not good, right? The way the Web3 has been driven by this short-term greed. Said that what needs to happen is the essence of Web3 needs to be brought back. Decentralization is core, right? So DAOs are good. So if you know what DAOs are, so it's a decentralized autonomous organization. It's almost like a rebellion attitude, right? We don't need the CEO. So it will be for example, whoever owns governance tokens, they have a right to decide on every new feature that will be created. Every new hiring will be decided jointly by that. So that way, essence is good, right? It's rebellion, but essence is good. But then it's driven by you need to have those tokens, and those tokens have got values, whether monetary or not, that's a separate thing, right? Again, it's going back to that short-term greed. So what then Jack Dorsey did was he tried to disassociate, like what happened with Web 2.0. Dorsey tried to remove from Web.1. He said, let's talk about Web 5.
By the way, why was it called Web 5? Trick question. Really, why not Web 4?
Where is Web 4? That's always a,
He called it Web 5. It's actually derivable, the answer.
It's arithmetic, actually.
Yeah. So it was actually Web 2 plus Web 3. Okay, because he took from both. Back to you. Okay.
And that's interesting, and then it's not a joke. It's called Web 5 now, but Web 5 is the new Web 3. That's what is happening, to answer your question, right? And basically what it means is, let's take back the essence of Web 3, which is decentralization. And Web 2 was not all bad, right? There are certain things which Web 2 has survived for long. We are using Web 2 right now, right? We cannot live without Web 2 right now. If I have to go to the nearest tube station, I'll have to use a Web 2 application, right? I cannot live without that. If I have to do any payment, I'll have to use that. So let's pick the good things give good things from Web 2. Let's remove the centralization aspect from Web 2. Let's add the decentralization aspect of Web 3. That's where Web 2 plus Web 3 comes in, and Web 5. That's what is happening right now. Is that enough? Of course not. There is more that needs to happen. There are lots of smaller players who are coming up, mostly from the startup ecosystem. They're trying to drive it. Whether they can sustain the pressure from these large, OTT players, we'll have to see.
Yeah, and the answer again goes beyond technology. The first attack, if it may, of all the Web3 players and the Web3 evangelizers, they've lost. Okay, they've lost. Okay, and that's why now we're finding new ways like the Web 5, etc., etc. But they've lost not because of technology. They've lost because they're fighting this massive force, which is centralizing everything in our planet. our planet is getting increasingly centralized. Money is getting increasingly centralized. You know the statistics of 1% of people owning 60% or whatever of the money. Or organizations in every industry, there are now 2-3 companies which pretty much own greater than 80% of everything. Governments are getting centralized across the world. The banks are getting centralized, the banks kind of bulking up and whatever. And in this planet, where pretty much everything is moving towards centralization, it was very difficult for a few people to kind of move this bit away, okay, and kind of decentralize it. And so the story is not just about technology centralizing and decentralizing. It needs to reflect society, it reflects life, it reflects politics. And the second attempt also, if the world still keeps on moving that side, my view is it'll still fail.
But you talk about it's not the technology, and it's right, it's not the technology, it's the user that's going to drive it. And if you've got enough of a volume of users, and I'm thinking China and India, for example, I don't know how far, again, I don't know about web technologies, I write about chips. But so in terms of web, Alibaba, for example, when you go to China, everything is WePay and WeChat. Is that centralized, or are they moving towards some kind of democratization?
And
No, my point is, it's going to be the user that will drive it. So will it be sort of economies or countries like China and India that might help to sort of drive that?
Yeah, you're right. So users, I think it needs to be 360 degrees as well. So the states are coming up as well. So you mentioned India, right? And then it doesn't have to be solved. The entire decentralization is not going to happen on day one, right? Across everything, across data, across content, across identity. It's not going to happen on day one. But certain things are happening. I mean, when you asked that question, I think I should have added that as well. You said India, right? So there is a major problem worldwide on this, some business or some fraudster pretending to be a business. We hear all the time, right? I get almost on a daily basis a call, hey, I'm calling from HMRC, there is a warrant being issued. Things like that, right? How do you actually stop it? So different countries try to use different mechanisms. In US, they use some technological solution called stir shaken. It didn't work. It was very expensive, didn't work, right? UK was waiting for it to be succeeding in US, then they will apply, but it didn't succeed. So in UK, we still don't know what to do, right? In India, they used the decentralized model just to solve this problem. They created a blockchain, an India-wide blockchain. And then anyone who needs to say, by anyone I mean a business, if they need to send a message on behalf of the business, let's say, any bank or any kind of e-commerce provider, they need to register their identity, the business identity, into that blockchain in a decentralized way, right? And every SMS provider or any operator, when they are sending that SMS to be small users, simple users who could be a victim, it is a responsibility of these mobile operators to check in their own blockchain node whether the registration is there or not. So that's a decentralization model. So it's very popular in India. It's called the DLT solution, right? It's called the DLT. It's the basically distributed ledger technology. They call it a DLT solution. But that's a decentralization happening by the state to solve a specific problem. In Europe, for example, for the identity, European Union has come up with a regulation, it's called eIDAS. So eIDAS was there earlier as well. It was eIDAS 1.0, which was very centralized, right? So every state within Europe was supposed to implement a centralized solution where digital identity is provided by the state, right? That didn't work. Some success was there, but then what happened was eIDAS 2.0 came in based on the feedback. eIDAS 2.0 is decentralized identity, where I as a user, again it's not yet implemented, it's getting implemented, I as a user will have my own digital identity in my identity wallet. So, if let's say if I go to a telecom operator, hey, I want to get a SIM. Right now what happens is, I'll have to bring in some artifacts which is centralized from the utility company and so on, right? Right now, I don't need to do that when that gets implemented. My identity is something that I am carrying. How it is implemented doesn't matter, right? Right now the idea is it will be implemented in a digital identity wallet on our phone. Maybe that's an acceptable solution for now, but maybe not for the future. Then what I'll do is I will prove my identity using some cryptography. Of course, technology needs to be there. Then I am carrying my identity. I am owning my identity. I am not using, or I am not delegating my identity proofing to the utility company or the bank or the government or to the telecom company. So these, let's say, small realizations are probably the way to go from the state and, as you said, from the users as well and small players. The, let's say, startup ecosystem needs to play a bigger role, because for these, let's say, larger established centralized players, it's not in their interest to do this.
Please, the mic. Okay, maybe there and then you. Maybe you can pass the mic to him itself.
Yeah, thank you for all the information and really interesting insights. But I'm sort of been thinking. Sorry, I'm Abhinav Kare. I work with HCL Technologies. Coming back to the question. So, I've been thinking about the business model construct that you brought about, and I'm trying to relate it to the existing model that we have. All the arguments that you've given, it's fantastic, and I think that's required, and we'll see when it comes into force. But the whole element of centralization, wherein, let's say, a content creator, when he creates something, he does not have to worry about the reach, because that's provided by the platform. If you post something on YouTube, it goes to millions of users, and which gives him potential, even 1% of the user base that's there, and then the monetization potential is high. How does it happen in a decentralized? Because when you have your own, let's say, your own pocket, your own identity, your own set where your content is, how does the mass come to know about it? How do they interact, and how will the business model evolve then?
Yeah, so it's a very good question, okay? Because that actually changes the way the web works, right? So right now as well, for example, if you're a content creator, let's say if you're a YouTuber, right? You create YouTube, okay? The business model is ad driven right now, right? So you attach, let's say, Google Ads, and then based on the impression you get paid, right? And same with advertisers, they're getting paid. So there's an ecosystem there, but it's centralized, right? But as a content creator, you don't really care, or you need to know how that entire architecture works, right? Your objective as a content creator is maximum reach, so that the ad impressions will be more and you get more revenue, right? That's what it is. That doesn't need to change when the web architecture changes to Web3. So the exact same objective, otherwise it doesn't work, right? If I'm a content creator, my objectives are exactly the same. There is some, let's say, utopia there where I think, oh, it needs to be decentralized. So what? For the business to sustain, as a business person, as a content creator, my objectives are maximum reach, I get more revenue, right? So now, the exact same objective can be provided through this new architecture. The only difference is, instead of me using, let's say, YouTube or Insta, right? I will use something else, and that something else is not owned by an organization. That's provided by a network, and it's not utopia, it's already happening. So there is a Web3 network called Decentraland, and the other one called Sandbox, right? They provide the network for example, for social network interactions to happen. So in that case, what will happen is, we will still use applications. I don't know what we will call that, right? We will call it, let's say, Web3 YouTube, just for the sake of it, right? I will create content exactly as how I am doing now, right? I will upload it, and then I don't care where it's getting uploaded. The way it will work is that upload will happen in that decentralized, ecosystem or world. The distribution will happen in exactly the same way. I, as a consumer of that, let's say I have subscribed to your Web3 YouTube channel, right? As a consumer of that, I'll consume it in exactly the same way. It will just happen to be, it will not be controlled by one single server farm owned by Google.
Yeah. So, let's kind of accept one fact. Centralization is easy. Decentralization is hard.
Agreed.
Okay, in everything in life. Okay, if there was just one bank in this world, okay, it would be a very nice thing, okay, from a one perspective, because everyone banks in that bank. Exchanging stuff is simple. You don't need a bank-to-bank currency, whatever. You don't need, if there was one country, even better. Okay, if there was one telecom operator. So, decentralization is always tough, more difficult. But, as he was saying, the centralization argument is not at the user level. Okay, it's actually at the platform level. Suppose now the right way for a YouTube to have been built, the right, if I may say, a little socialist way, okay, for Web3 is a left-leaning technology, let's be very, and that's the other interesting angle, philosophical angle to it, okay, and it's called distribution of wealth. The whole Marxian philosophy of distribution of wealth, okay, rather than concentration of wealth. With YouTube, there's concentration of wealth, okay, at a Google level or YouTube level, because it's owned by a central entity. Now think of if instead in a utopian world, okay, YouTube had been created such that every user owned it. Every user owned it. Okay, so if YouTube has about 1 billion users, let's say, every user, okay, would own a small piece of YouTube because he owns certain tokens in it, and they would have paid for it. Either paid for it by actual money or through content, okay, or through data. And you actually own, and those were all tokenized. And this massive decentralized platform, now decentralized platform, which had the great reach, etc., was owned by the users. Now the users would be therefore not only getting the money or for whatever they monetize there, they actually, if YouTube tomorrow is valued at $100 billion, each one of the users actually owns a piece of it. You think about this was the ICO original thought also, but again it was bastardized to mean something else. But the decentralization is at the platform level. What if we could create newer platforms which were that big but built through a decentralized mechanism?
And that does not mean that the content is replicated over the different decentralized, let's say, islands which are created. So the content also stays at the creator island, let's call it.
It is not creator's island. See, again, it's one landmass, okay, which is YouTube. It's just owned by a billion people.
So, that's another, this is what a DAO is, a decentralized autonomous organization. Although the reality is that A is not there, it's like decentralized organization only, right? So that exact model, where let's say as a content creator, you own some tokens as well, right? And you can decide that, oh, I want some tokens, I want some fiat money as well, right? Because that's what, the reason you want that token is you can have a say in how everything works in that decentralized YouTube. What does that mean is tomorrow, if let's say someone decides in YouTube the distribution algorithm changes and then that has a negative impact on your reach, right? Then you are getting impacted, but you don't have a say. You are dependent on a decision of someone else, right?
Correct.
But in this decentralized, let's say autonomous organization, which is let's say decentralized YouTube, then you have a say.
This is the amount of tokens you own.
Okay.
And then that can be, kind of debated as well. And those are the consensus algorithms, right? So one thing could be you own more token, you have a more say. Is that really decentralization?
That's proof of stake. Okay, and it is all tied together, right? The whole token wise is actually then you bring to the blockchain and proof of stake versus proof of work, etc., etc. You had a question.
Yeah, I mean, some of the.
Yeah, I have a question. Am I audible?
Oh, okay. Yes, President, I guess online.
Sorry, yeah. Just been observing the conversation. It's very interesting. Hi, this is Vivek Kodani from Mumbai, India. Just want to take a viewpoint here and see if this is something that can be replicated. Would you say that the creation of the unified payment interface by the Indian banking ecosystem is a form of Web3 version for payments? It's not owned by any bank. They created this entire capability which multiple banks, multiple payment service providers, or PSP as they call them, can participate, enable each and everybody who owns a mobile phone with an internet connection to transactions. Do you call that as a Web3 version for payments?
Very good question. Thanks. And thanks for keeping awake at, what time is it? 1 o'clock?
Yeah, it's the beginning. It's the beginning of a new day.
So UPI is not really Web3, right? UPI is a centralized platform, right? And someone can decide, NPCI can decide tomorrow.
NPCI is the National Payment Corporation of India.
Yeah, so that owns UPI. So they can actually decide that as a centralized organization can decide what happens with UPI. So UPI has got some features today, right? So for example, as you said, it's anyone can participate, any wallet provider can participate, any bank can participate. I as a user can transfer money from a phone number to another bank account or a phone number to another number. Let's say then NPCI as a central organization decides that, okay, from Aadhaar, only allowed mechanism is Aadhaar number to Aadhaar number, okay? Then no one else can.
Aadhaar is the identity.
Yeah, sorry, Aadhaar. Aadhaar is the digital identity in India as well. So in that case, that's what will happen, right? That's not what Web3 is. So there are some elements of decentralization here, like, who is using it? It's the banks, it's the wallet providers, but the platform is centralized. More importantly, the organization is centralized.
Yeah.
It's someone's centralized decision that impacts every single stakeholder in the ecosystem. So
In fact, one of the most controversial articles I ever wrote in terms of the number of trawling that I got was almost 3 years back, and I'm sure you can still find it on the web and on LinkedIn, etc., was that what if all of the digital public infrastructure that India has created the only digital public infrastructure at scale, frankly. At lesser scale, there are others, but at scale, there's only one of that robustness, that maturity. What if all of it had been created in a decentralized manner? And then all the implications around it, and there's so much good that could have happened, but it would have been almost impossible to do because of the technology, and that created a lot of, if I may say so, drama in the comments, etc. But it's not. Okay, so it could have been, and parts of it could have been right up front created in a decentralized manner, which could have really helped in many, many ways, including the fact that it gets hacked every other day, okay, today. And that could have also been helped in many, many ways. But there would have been some other cons also of it. Sorry, I know you had...
Just to add one thing here, and this is very important for taking the Web3 journey and the decentralization journey forward, is we shouldn't fake decentralization, right? We are talking about NFTs. I don't know if anyone have used it. So you will use a wallet. Most of the time you will use a MetaMask wallet, right? And then you use the Ethereum blockchain and you feel that, okay, great, this is decentralized. Is it? If it is decentralized, in that case, you should have your own Ethereum node. Have you ever used any your own? Do you know how MetaMask works? MetaMask is a centralized company. MetaMask uses something called Infura nodes, which are centralized. So you are using some centralized company's node to talk to Ethereum. That's faking decentralization. This is something we should avoid, right? Because otherwise we will end up in another centralized, decentralized world.
How many questions can we take, if any?
Go ahead. I mean, you could have 30 minutes more.
Oh, sure, there's lots of time. I realize. I might need to add out a little.
So my question goes back to
Right,
the
if you
point.
don't mind.
Sorry.
Introduction.
Sorry, I'm Rohit Patney. Good to meet you all. My question goes back to your point about a digital token or digital ID that's actually owned by the individual, and how that becomes interoperable across these decentralized ecosystems that are coming out. I mean, we talked just now about the Indian UPI network and so on, and that's one system, but how do we collate or integrate these decentralized systems where I can then transact across these global entities with my own digital ID? Because I think the complexity is about interoperability. It's obviously about security and knowing who the owner of that token is, first of all. So this is, I think, just the tip of the iceberg in terms of making this whole Web3 or Web5, as it might become at some point in the future. How will that actually collate and be brought together?
Yeah, so there is some major work that has happened in that area, right? The first thing, you use some very critical terms, right? Interoperability, because that is critical. In Jaspreet's example of what happens if I start to, hit Amazon, what happens to all my Kindle books, right? So the terminology used there is they are burnt because you cannot use this, right? Here as well, what happens, if I cannot reuse my own digital identity across different organizations. So for that, one thing is needed is interoperability. For interoperability, you need independent standards, right? The web works exactly the same way because there is a standard body which is actually looking after it, right? So there is a lot of standard work that has happened in this space by W3C, by World Wide Web Consortium. It's called the DID Consortium, Decentralized Identity. So there are multiple things here, right? Identity is a complex thing. The first thing is the identifier. That's where we started, right? So if you identify yourself digitally in any digital services, you first use an identifier. In the user ID, password era, we used to use email ID as our identifier, right? They're centralized. If your email ID is from Yahoo and tomorrow you start to hit Yahoo, there is nothing you can do with that. You cannot take that and then start to use it in Google, right? You will have to create another identifier. So the identifier interoperability is the first thing, right? Same with any other identifier you can think of. Your Facebook ID, your Twitter or X handle, or your Instagram handle. They are identifiers in the digital space, but they are centralized. The first thing that was needed was to free up the identifier which is owned by me or you or the organization or some business, right? So there is a standard that's been created. It's called DID, decentralized identity, and that's used in Web5, where that DID is owned by you and me, not by anyone else, right? In that EIDAS 2.0, as I was talking about, those digital wallets, they have this DID which represents me, right? And then it's not tied to Google or Yahoo or to any government. That is owned by me. And how do I show that ownership? Using cryptographic proof. So behind that DID, DID is a bit of a complex structure. And that's something that we need to do. We'll come to that later. I call it humanization of that. So email ID is still humanized, right? abcd@yahoo.com humanized. I can remember it, right? The DID is quite complex. And then these cryptographic keys are even complex. If you have seen, so in the Bitcoin network, for example, or in any less Ethereum network, you are represented as a private key. If you see that private key, it's ugly, right? It's not for humans, it's for the machines. So we need to do that humanization, but that's a separate problem that can be solved. This is where we come in. And again, I'll say from Sakura, this is exactly what we are doing. We are humanizing that cryptography. But coming back to you, so that's the first thing. That's already been done, right? Standardization of identifier which is portable, which is interoperable across all. Not owned by anyone, owned by me, right? and then I have a choice because that deed structure is taking care of everything. When I say choice, because there will not be, and then there is blockchain thing is needed as well on top of the internet, right? And then there is not one blockchain. So last time I checked, there were 30,000 blockchains. Many of them doesn't make any sense. Someone created it, but there are only few which are critical, right? From a business sense, it's the Bitcoin, which is very specific, then Ethereum, generic, then Solana. So then I have a choice. Where do I want to, keep my public identifier, whether it is in Ethereum, whether it is in Solana, or whether it is some ABC which is in the future. And I can actually put it, right? It's my choice. So that's something has happened from standardization perspective. From implementation perspective, not enough is being done. So EIDAS 2.0 from the European Union is using that. So they're using the deed standard. There is another thing there as well, is called verifiable credential, right? So right now, for example, if you're going in a pub, right, and you need to prove that you're an adult, how do you do that? You take out, the only option is you take out your driving license and show, right? In driving license, there are a lot many more information that's not needed. All you need to prove you're an adult or not. The driving license has got your address, have got your ID, driving ID, and then depending on the country, there could be more information there as well. It even has your date of birth. So you don't need to give those information, right? But you don't have a choice. That's the only thing that you have got. And it's centralized. It's centralized by here is DVLA, or in other countries it could be something else, right? In this new world, it's called verifiable credential, and you don't need to show the driving license. Those credentials, like whether you're adult, whether you are allowed to drive, whether you're a citizen here, they are verifiable credential in your wallet, which is interoperable. And you decide which one to present. Of course, it needs to be acceptable. If someone is asking whether you're adult or not, you cannot say I'm a citizen. That doesn't mean anything, right? There needs to be some negotiation, digital negotiation, between the service where you're accessing and me and my digital wallet. But those standards are already there. And as I said, EIDAS 2.0 is using that. More needs to happen here, but that's where the industry needs to move towards. Many of the other wallets, for example, including the wallets that we carry, Apple wallets, they don't use that standard. And that's not surprising.
So I think you had a question, right? And I just wanted to, just before you ask that question, this will probably be my last question. I need to go, I apologize in advance, I need to go back to Cambridge, and there's one particular line which is not working to go. So if I don't take this, I get very late. So I will run in about 5-7 minutes. But please.
Thank you. Thank you for the discussion. It's really insightful. So I was working in Web3, so I'm close to these concepts. One thing about the I have two questions actually. I'll keep them quick.
Take the non-identity one.
So the non-identity one is also somewhat related. So essentially the ownership piece, right? I was thinking eventually the ownership would mean ownership of computing power, right? And that is what ideal decentralization would come to. So for example, right, I mean, the GCP, AWS, all these cloud service providers, they want to be a part of this whole Web3 ecosystem, right, and provide cloud solutions or computing power to these blockchain, Web3 blockchains. So eventually, if we are running nodes on these centralized cloud providers, how does that work? Like eventually, I think your node has to be your node where the computing power is what you own, where you say that I want to shut this computer down today, or I want to shut this node down today, and you can do that. Is there some solution to that, or is this I know that this is a long-going discussion as well, but this is something that keeps boggling my mind. I just want to pick your brains on that.
Before that, can I start? Please share your identity.
Sorry, I am also Abhishek Arun. I'm Abhishek Arun, and I was working for a Web3 startup till last June. Now I'm an independent consultant. So
much before the cloud came, okay, Actually, the original vision of the cloud also was decentralized.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how vision started. They become centralized somehow. Okay. Have you heard of something called SETI?
Sorry?
SETI, S-E-T-I. I can see a couple of nods.
Search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Exactly. Search for extraterrestrial intelligence. How did it work?
Same idea.
How did the computing power come for that? Let me put it. I don't know how it worked, but how did the computing power come for that?
Yeah, so they publish all their information that they collect on
It needs massive computing power. See, you're looking at the entire sky. Okay, and you have to kind of, you get signals from there through various telescopes, etc., etc. But to process that, you need massive computing power. SETI was a voluntary initiative in many ways. It's not an organization. And then again, the answer is very derivable. Okay, but do you know how the computing power came for that? All the computers sitting on our desks at home lying unutilized at multiple times of the day. So you signed on to SETI and basically said that, look, whenever my computer is not getting used, it can be used for SETI. And so there's millions of desktops, okay, literally, or whatever else, okay, sitting on people's desks when they were not being used by the owners, were actually, that computing power was being used towards that. Now that was amazing decentralized computing, okay, each one owning that part of it. And that, in a sense, was the cloud. Except that it was the real decentralized cloud because each computing node was owned by one person or individual or company and was completely distributed as you would imagine a cloud to be. But then that computing started getting centralized in data centers. Okay, and the cloud actually became nothing but data centers. The cloud, it's weird. I mean, I've studied the cloud again from a philosophical, ethical way quite a lot, and the cloud is absolutely the wrong word for it. It's super polluting, very noisy. Okay, it emanates huge amounts of heat. CO2, destroys the soil that is around it. Okay, and because you have taken something which was decentralized and made it, in some sense, centralized. I know I'm not answering your question, which he did. Okay, but crypto mining in many ways, they don't use the cloud, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, they actually set up their own specific data centers for that, and there are cloud data, there Bitcoin data centers, etc., or which are kind of using ASIC chips, etc., which the cloud cannot give it to them. So in that sense, at least this bit of it is not centralized with the big cloud providers. It's actually decentralized and frankly, the cloud providers don't care whether it's Web 3 or Web 7 or Web 89. Okay, they just want to provide the cloud computing power, and whatever else the company is doing with it, it's doing with it. Okay, so if you have any,
So that's one solution, what you said, right? SETI. And then for decentralization, you don't need blockchain, right? Decentralization is not new. Do you remember Napster? So Napster was exactly the SETI model, right? Torrents, which then got banned because the governance was missing, right? That's exactly that. There are no torrent servers. Every single laptop, I mean, because it was banned, otherwise they would have been on the phones as well, because now the phones are much more, kind of compute heavy. That's one of the solutions, right? You basically distribute it to every computing device that you're carrying, your phone, your watch even, the laptop. And then the important thing to resolve is the ownership and the governance.
and the business model.
Exactly.
And how do they get paid?
Exactly.
I mean, with torrents, etc., you were just using the power without actually paying the person whose power you were using. With SETI, you did it for a good cause. You didn't care. Okay. But that's why I again keep on coming back to this. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know because I'm right of way because I'm leaving. Okay, is that the Web3 is really about creating the business model behind doing this decentralization. There are many ways to do decentralization which are beyond blockchain. Okay, but how do we find the incentive mechanism, the payment mechanism? And that is where tokenization, etc., and identity. And then if you kind of solve for these 2-3 things, pretty much everything can be put in that business model, including your problem.
Yeah, so that's one solution, but that doesn't have to be one solution, right? The other thing is, you rightly mentioned that centralization of compute resource is kind of will counterbalance decentralization, right? But if there are choices, right? If there are multiple cloud providers, and I, as a participant in that decentralized economy, have a choice from moving here to there. So in that case, that risk is mitigated, right? Tomorrow, if AWS decides let's shut down, then other nodes are existing, right? And no one will even notice if there are choices. Right now, there are not enough choices. Enough choices needed to be there. So you may know the interplanetary file system, right, which has been created.
Yeah.
And then it uses cloud as well, but not just cloud. I have seen, and I tried to run it as well on my own laptop, one node of IPFS. So that's a model, right? It doesn't matter, the compute resource is coming from a cloud or from a PC sitting under my desk or a data center. Those needs to be abstracted using the governance model on top. And in that case, if someone decides let's shut it down, no one will even notice. Unless every single node decides let's shut it down. But then that means that the entire society or the entire network wants to shut it down. So there is not one solution, there will be multiple solutions, but that needs to be mitigated, right? You cannot just rely on, you cannot just run the entire, let's say, Ethereum on AWS. Then there is a big risk. Then again, this is faking decentralization.
Yeah.
I will use that gap to thank every one of you and run off to catch my train. Thank you.
We've got a question coming from India. Navita, you there?
Hi, thanks Subhash. I've been listening in. I'm based in London, Navita Yadav. I run capital markets, so I'm going to bring the financial markets perspective. Question or a thought. I think the gentleman on the dais spoke about creator economy, they spoke about democratization, and they also spoke about tokenization. I'm particularly passionate about tokenization, and I do believe that this will happen in phases. Democratization is a very large purpose. It needs trust, transparency, and who's going to create that governance model, who's going to run that governance model. But I think the world still needs to first attempt tokenization or fractionalization of a variety of asset classes, not just for financial markets, but overall in the real world, including real estate, commodities, anything that has value. So I think if there was a question, I would really ask that the interoperability is the big question mark what we face in financial markets. Even though we might have created democratic platforms, if you like a combination of banks and regulators coming together. Having said that, data sharing is always an issue because business models are different and there is always competition. So I think it is going to take a while. Having said that, there are these ownership platforms. At a platform level, you see this kind of creation happening. Who will run these platforms? Currently, we are seeing private players running these platforms. How these private players combine together and sort of come together for the democratic process is another thing. But I think all the points raised on the dais were very valid, and a massive sort of intent in financial markets to democratize or tokenize the current infrastructure. We are saying that 10% of the global GDP by 2030 will be constituted by tokenized assets. So I think it's a great discussion. I'm not sure if this was any question, but just some thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So, maybe let's get back to the financial aspects. We said that, and again, there is nothing against those financial kind of use cases, right? For example, real world asset tokenization. That's a brilliant use case that for Web3, right? Because otherwise, it's tricky. And then many of the recent ERC in Ethereum, I forgot the number, I think it's 7907, it's in 2022 it came up. That came up specifically for the real estate tokenization. So basically, for example, if you want to invest in real estate, you buy a property or a house, it's very difficult to kind of dilute your investment in a fractional way, right? It's tricky. I mean, finding someone who will only buy 10% of that property, it's tricky. But if you tokenize it, it becomes very, very easy, right? You represent the real estate as a token in whatever platform, doesn't matter. In that case, the fractionalization becomes very, very easy. And then you can create derivatives on top of the token. That's how the TradFi, as we call it, the traditional finance works. And then they will continue to work in this tokenized ecosystem as well. The only thing that we were actually discussing is that shouldn't be the only use case. But that doesn't mean that these use cases will not be there. These use cases will be there and should be there because this will help the entire, let's say, economy to grow as well. And as you rightly stated, the 10% of the world GDP will be in this tokenized ecosystem. So thanks for that.
Good. We've got 9 more minutes, 7 more minutes actually. Any questions? Happy to take them.
So something clicked in my mind. Fully homomorphic encryption. The lady there talked about data encryption. Is that a route to private data sharing and then decentralization? Very simple question.
Thanks for that. So fully homomorphic encryption will help with this verifiable credential, right? Until we solve the quantum, kind of encryption models. So in a verifiable credential way, so the way this entire, let's say, verifiable credential thing works is, let's say if I need to prove in that previous scenario that I need to prove that I am adult, right? So in my digital wallet, that credential that I'm an adult will be there, right? But it is important that who has vouched for it. I can say I'm an adult, but I cannot be, right? So it needs to be vouched by someone, right? They don't have to be present all the time, but at some point they have vouched for it. And then how they have vouched in the digital world, they have encoded that vouching using a digital signature, right? And someone can independently verify that that was definitely vouched by, let's say, the government, or let's say the bank, for example, right? And then what needs to happen is when I am presenting digitally, let's say that I am an adult, and then it is seen in my wallet that I am an adult, there is a digital signature, and then that digital signature belongs to the government or some utility company or a bank, then they can verify independently. But now, if I need to send that data, of course I want to encrypt it, right? And then I don't want the third party or whoever is processing it to decrypt it. All I want then is to process that information. I have sent in an encrypted form that I am an adult. Or, being adult is not really, let's say, sensitive information. Let's say I pass my date of birth, it is sensitive, right? I have passed it through encryption, but I don't want the other entity to decrypt it. I want them to process it to check that, are you an adult? It returns back an adult. That can be helped using homomorphic encryption. So that's one of the mechanisms, right? Doesn't have to be. There could be other mechanisms as well. Homomorphic encryption definitely will help in these kind of scenarios. In a zero knowledge proof, as we call it, where we are not really providing the knowledge, but still the knowledge is somehow, proven.
Because I think there's a few chip startups doing FHE chips at the moment. So
Exactly.
Okay. Before there's a quick question for Dr. Mike Short.
Just a quick question. So Mike Short, former Chief Scientist, UK Government. Digital currency has not been mentioned. And it seems to me that when you talk about tokenization, one could link it to digital currencies. Do you see digital currencies as being a leader towards Web 3.0 or Web 5.0, or do you see it being handled independently?
Thanks, Mike, for that. So they are a leader right now, as you know, right? That's the primary use case that everyone is looking into for the obvious reasons, right? And multiple forms of those as well, not just the cryptocurrencies not run by on this utopian world, the CBDCs as well as digital currencies, and also pure digital currencies, not just CBDCs, not pegged to any fiat currencies. But they may or may not be decentralized. Like CBDCs doesn't have to be centralized, decentralized. It's always centralized. So that use case we cannot ignore. But I think, as we were discussing, that use case shouldn't drive the essence of Web3. That's where we need to be careful with. Should that be the main use case for Web3? Personally, I think should not. But we cannot avoid it being discussed as a primary use case going forward. So we need to keep that, but at the same time, we need to talk about all the other decentralization, giving the control back to the user as well.
I agree, but it may be a platform determinant, it might be a regulatory determinant, it might also help in other ways with security and trust.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one compromise could be because regulators will want that.
Yeah.
One compromise could be accepting that as one of the use cases. So basically, anything else we can do in that platform, in a decentralized platform, but any form of digital currencies need to be there as well. And I think we cannot avoid every currency to be digitized at some point, right? That will happen no matter what. Whether in a centralized way or decentralized way, that's separate.
Is there time for one more question?
You want to watch? Yeah, good.
Subhash, there was time for one last question.
Sorry.
Hi, it's.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, it's remotely. Hi, I'm in the middle of a snowstorm in Toronto, so sorry about any of the noises. My name is Riddhi Sen. I work in the data space. I've been a partner at a consulting firm previously, just enjoying a career break right now. Gautam, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your insights. Just turning it back to Web3 and advertising in the World Wide Web. Obviously, we know that Google is now looking to phase out its third-party cookies in advertising. It's certainly not the first platform to do so. Chrome isn't the first platform to do so. Do you think that this is due to a philosophical push with the ethos that you've spoken about around Web3, protecting individual identities, PII, which they claim it to be, or is it something more economically driven?
Thanks for that question. I can only guess why Google is doing that. I don't think it's to follow the ethos of decentralization, because that will be counterintuitive considering what Google's business model is, right? It is there is a messaging there, of course, because in many of the regulators don't like it, as we all know, right? Cookies are been under the scanner for quite some time. And then also the world moved away from using, let's say, websites, and then they started to use applications, right? So in that case, cookies are not that useful anyway. Secondly, there is a move that's going on from apps into more of chatbots, right? Where or personal AI agents, where even whatever was being implemented in app, let's forget even cookies, will not even be relevant. So in that case, building an entire platform, ecosystem, and economy based on cookies doesn't really make sense. So personally, I believe that's where the driver is, because everyone can see that the next application, you will not have individual applications. You will really have a personal AI agent, and the personal AI agent will know that I need to look for directions to the nearest tube station. I don't need to open up a web browser, then look for maps.google.com, and then cookies will be relevant, right? I think that's where probably the driver is, but that's my personal view.
Thanks, Riddhi.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, sorry, just had one more question. I'm Shub, and I'm currently studying at Queen Elizabeth in Barnet. I just wanted to ask, we've talked a lot about the pros and the benefits that come from decentralization, but one thing that strikes me as a major drawback is the lack of centralization leading to the lack of trackability and policing. So because there's no central system or corporation to hold accountable, it might be a lot easier to conduct illegal activities like money laundering with Bitcoin or hate speech with decentralized content platforms. So in a Web3 or Web5 environment, how will effective policing and governance occur?
Yeah, very good question, Shub. Thanks for that. And decentralization doesn't mean no regulation, right? That's probably is a confusion right now. Regulation needs to evolve. Regulation is very centralized now, so there are discussions happening on regulatory sandbox because you cannot really implement regulations that quickly in some sort of sandbox, and decentralized regulation as well. Autonomous regulation, like what happens in a DAO, right? So you don't just create a regulation, you put it in a smart contract, in a blockchain type of scenario, right? So traceability is actually even much more easier in a decentralized world. In a blockchain, you cannot deny that you didn't do the transaction because you signed the transaction using your private key, which only belongs to you, right? So that way, technically, traceability is not really a problem. So, but then I think it's more of a utopian world where we say, no, there shouldn't be any regulation, no one should be tracked. That can be solved, but then we need to evolve it. Right now, there are lots of issues that we have not solved. We are not there yet. It's a good question, we don't have all the answers. For example, in a DAO, right, in a decentralized autonomous organization we were talking about, that YouTube example that we were talking about earlier. It's great when every user is, owning the part of it, right? Let's say there is some regulation as well. The regulation says that if some wrong decision is being taken by the organization, someone should be penalized, right? If it happens in my organization, the CEO will be penalized or the directors will be penalized, right? In a DAO, who will be penalized, right? So in that case, every single user, so in YouTube, I don't know, it's 1 billion, I don't know how many users are there. Let's say everyone will be penalized. Is that really realistic? It's not, right? So the regulation needs to be evolved alongside as well. And then all the things that you talked about, traceability, making sure that the right things are happening, illegal things are not happening, all the good things which has happened in, for example, in the financial industry, like anti-money, AML, anti-money laundering, they all need to be there. But they need to evolve as well. We are not there yet.
Coming to that point, actually, I'm Ravi, working in banking space. So you are talking about KYC ML related issues. So right now also traceability is not an issue. You can trace people until the last mile. But the identity is the issue because they operate through fake identities.
Yeah.
So how using this new technologies, how you curtail this kind of fake identities going forward?
Okay, before we go to answer that, we have the last question from Abhilash. Maybe we can take two of them together. Yeah, Abhilash.
Hi, I just wanted, I'm a novice here, but thank you for the lovely discussion. It's been really educative. But one fundamental question in terms of Web 3.0 or decentralization, I don't come from this space, so maybe silly, but what I'm trying to, what I could gather.
Where are you coming from?
Okay, I am from the banking and finance space, but again, not from the tech side, more from the asset management side. So what I'm trying to understand, what I could gather in terms of decentralization is, or the way multiple examples have been given is Web 3.0 is multiple instances of Web 2.0 with checks and balances, something like that. For example, the YouTube creator economies example, you mentioned two decentralized platforms. One was Decentral and one was Sandbox. So if I as a Web 3.0 YouTube creator, I'm operating on Decentral and the other side of the transaction is on the other platform which is Decentral. So then the whole universe is technically not, you still have two major players. So is it really decentral considering the whole universe side? And one more example, where proof of concept or proof of stake, where you generate coins, and like for the YouTube example again, you said there are 1 billion people all owning equal stake, equal penalized, equal contribution. The way I would look at it is, say for example, Google shareholders, everybody owning 1 share each. But there will be some point of time where there will be some people who own more coins by mere virtue of they doing extra effort. So they would have when they're getting penalized or getting benefit, it won't be the so-called decentralized way. If there has to be a decision be taken, the guy who has more computing power in this example, vis-a-vis a financial parlance, is somebody who holds higher number of shares or voting rights, has a say. So the whole, while theoretically in essence we are trying to decentralize, while that may be the starting point where everybody has equal coins or whatever computing power, but fundamentally by human nature, I'm sure everybody will try to mine more coins and kind of go a step ahead. So and hence I was trying to figure out why is it not clicking. ChatGPT just rose like crazy. So if this is so good, why is it not just being accepted? So these were some thoughts. The exact question here is A, the understanding of decentralization and Web 3.0, and B, your take on why is it not really clicked the way it looks very, the solution to the existing problems, but still it's not taking up. So these are the two fundamental questions. I just tried to pick the examples which were used to put across my point.
Sure.
I just want to ask one question along with his extension of that question. So he asked about fake IDs. So similar to that, like if we assume everything is implemented, what do you foresee? Like how the frauds can happen, how the information stealing, identity stealing can happen in this, and if someone lost its identity, how do they get, like multiple identities and stealing?
And your name, please.
Sorry, I'm Kavita. I'm working in financial crime.
Thanks. So let's start from your perspective, right? You said that identifying is a problem, right? Fake identity is a problem. Moving to Web3 identity is not going to solve all the problems, right? Let's just face it, right? But it will move towards a better reality where there are better ways of doing identity, right? So right now, as you know, anywhere, in not just in the financial ecosystem, anywhere the identity is proven using only 3 mechanisms, right? It's like, one is a knowledge. I need to prove that I have a knowledge, which is user ID password. I need to prove I am in possession of something. You remember those RSA tokens we used to carry? Or even OTP is possession. The third one is inheritance, which is biometrics. These are the 3. And then they are inappropriate, as I was saying, that they were patches being created, right? In the Web3 world, one important thing here is there is a realization that the weakest link in identity proofing is me, the human user, right? Because I am expected to do things which, from evolution perspective, it was never coded in me, right? I never needed to prove my identity or involve in the identity dance, as we call it. So that way in Web3, the identity is invisible. I am not involved in proving my identity, digital identity, I mean. So it's cryptography, right? So the cryptography is used. And then this is not the perfect solution, start of a solution. This is why I was saying that needs to be humanized. So cryptography is absolutely brilliant, as we all know, right? Because we are at least trusting the mathematics behind that, where if I can prove that I am the owner of that cryptographic key, there is no, unless quantum computers rule the world, there is no way that can be denied, right? That's what it happens. But now, how do I actually protect that cryptographic key? That's a big problem, right? And that's where majority of the attacks are happening right now. So one of the large token ecosystem was IOTA, where so they were quite nice. They said that we are not going to create the crypto keys, right? Anyone in the industry can generate the crypto keys for the users. So someone or some group came up saying that, hey, we are nice people, we will create crypto keys for free for the users. And this was the IOTA blockchain, so, and the IOTA coin, and then it was called iota.org. And then that someone or some group then provided free private public key pairs for the users or the wallets for this one. For 6 months, they were the nicest persons in the world. After 6 months, they vanished. And then they vanished with all the tokens. That's what happens, right? So these cryptographic keys are not for humans. One problem that we have not solved yet is how do we link that cryptographic key with a human? I call it the humanization of the cryptography. There are certain things, this is why we come in from Secura, we are doing it. There is something that the mobile operators are doing from 1991. Okay, so how do you identify yourself when you need to make a phone call? You don't, right? You don't identify. You just pick up the phone, okay, dial the number or pick that number and that's it, right? But they need to identify you. How do they identify? Using a cryptography. Where is that cryptographic key sitting? In your SIM. Do you even know that? You don't, right? There is a 128-bit key sitting on that SIM. It's called KI key. That's there. But that's what humanization is, right? You don't need to know it. It's invisible, but still it works. So that's something, I'm not saying this is the only solution. That's one solution. There could be other solutions as well. But let's accept that's a problem that we need to solve in this new world where we humanize cryptography. Cryptography as an identity solution in the digital world, that's where the way to go. And it's not just me, we're saying, if you are following in this world, like for example, Apple last year in WWDC, they announced something called passkeys, right? Passkeys are exactly this. It's like you are identified using a cryptographic key, which is there in the iPhone. Same is followed by Google as well. So that's the solution. It's not the complete solution. Halfway there. You then asked about, is this really, how do we solve that? I think you asked.
No, the fundamental part of decentralization and why is it not taken?
Yeah, so, sorry, why it has not taken? I think that's exactly where we started the discussion carefully, right? It has not taken off because it's been right now driven by short-term greed of these, I will earn a lot of money because if I buy this cryptocurrency, or if you remember the ICO craze, right? Everyone was creating, it was so easy to create any token. So there's a Ethereum standard called E13, right? You can create token within 5 minutes. And then you do the ICO and then you think that you'll become a billionaire, right? That has distracted the industry as a whole, right? The other thing is you said that ChatGPT became very, very popular overnight, right? 29th of November, 2022 when they launched, and then now everyone runs there. Here we are not talking about one single technology or one single organization, right? ChatGPT, GPT as well was not new. So the transformer model was introduced in 2017 by Google, as you know, right? Attention was all needed, that was the paper that was published. So it just happened that it became very easy for anyone to access a large language model. But that's just one part of the technology. What we are talking about here is evolving the web altogether. That's not just one organization, one technology. It's evolving, so many things together. It's evolving the business model. It's evolving the architecture. It's evolving every single application. It's evolving our own behavior as well. We are used to a certain way of using the web, right? It's evolving the entire app ecosystem as well. So that's not that easy. Having said that, some start has already happened. We'll have to see how it moves, right? Starting with small things like identity, it's happening through the regulators and all, right? But I agree with you, it has not picked up as it should have been, but things take time. This type of things will take time. Sorry, what was your question? I forgot.
It's extension of.
Oh yeah, so you said that what frauds will happen, we'll yet to see, right? Fraudsters are the most creative species on earth, right? Fraud fighting is what I do as a day job. And then the type of creativity that I have seen is you are in financial forensics as well, you will know it as well. So there is always a catch-up game, right? You will never know. So that catch-up, I am sure in Web3 as well we will have to do. We will make it difficult for them, especially majority of the frauds right now, as I was saying, the rise in PPI says, is credential phishing, right? Yeah. Because that's the easy part. That will be because now it's very difficult. They will have to steal, and then that's the benefit of decentralization. If all those user ID passwords are not stored in the Sony's database or the Microsoft database, there is less incentive for these guys to hack them or track them. Those identity or those private keys are in my phone, in your phone. They will have to steal or compromise every single phone on earth. That's a distraction. But that doesn't mean fraud will go away. How the fraudster will use it, it's anyone's case, right? And
They
we'll have
can
to do
also
the
form a
catching.
network.
Yeah, exactly. They can. And then, they will attack on, because this blockchain ecosystem works on things like the smart contracts, right? So making things are automated, they will attack there, right? We'll have to make sure that they are not attacked. But how the fraudsters will navigate, we don't know that yet. They will find creative ways, for sure.
Are we done? Seriously? Thank you very much. Thanks to each one of you once again. When I invited Gautam to join the panel today, he asked me how long is it going to take. What's the typical time? I told him it's take 90 minutes. We should end at 8 p.m. But never in the history of Tech Tuesday we ended at 8 p.m. It always stays up to 8:30. And we maintain the tradition. So thank you. A couple of quick things before I wrap up. The drinks has already been, it's already been placed out there. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, we will invite some of you to share your bites. So please hang around. Shub will coordinate with you and invite you outside for your small bite. The next episode of Tech Tuesday is on 6th of February 2024, which is the first Tuesday of the month. We will shortly come back to you on the location and the topic. Stay tuned with us on LinkedIn and WhatsApp and Twitter and everything else. And now the path forward for Tech Tuesday. As I also mentioned that today, the 9th of January, the last time we are hosting at this place, our current partnership with KNL ends today, or probably end of this month. I'm very pleased to announce our new partnership with Greenwoods Legal LLP. In fact, we have Russell Strong, who's one of the partners at Greenwoods here. Russell and his team and his company and his law firm have sort of agreed to be our hosting partner for the next 12-18 months, and it's a great pleasure to sort of work with them. I know Russell for a while now. We've sort of the good part is that we never discussed business. We only had lunch and dinner. I just hope we maintain the same tradition of Tech Tuesdays. But Russ, would be good to sort of hear a few words from you if you can.
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone.
Can you hear Mike?
Hello everyone. I won't take up much of your time. Another fantastic discussion. This is the second time I've been able to come and enjoy this sort of very thought-provoking forum. I think one of the best things about Tech Tuesdays is the fact that whilst we have a panel and they're clearly the ones we sort of defer to, everyone is involved in the discussion, and that's one of the reasons why I've really enjoyed what we're doing here. We're really excited to be part of this, and I suppose I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible next month on the 6th of February. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Russ. Yes, that's it. And thanks to the panel, just with Tinsha and Gautam for being here, for being the lone wolf for the last 30 minutes and taking all the questions. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you to each one of you for braving the winter and coming here. The drink is getting served. Please enjoy. Have a nice evening. And hope to see you, all of you, some of you, or many of you next month. Thank you.